Hello. Hello everyone. This is Shweta Agarwal from Tax Connect. And
Hello.
yeah, the speaker is our representative, Mr. Vivek Jalan here. And from our IT team, it is Avik Ghosh from our team. Okay. And we are starting right now on e-invoicing. And over to you, Mr. Vivek sir.
Yeah. Thanks, Shweta. Am I audible, Shweta?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
I'm
Yes,
audible,
sir.
no? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, thank you to all the participants over here. Uh, my voice is fine, no? Avik, one participant is
Yeah,
writing,
yeah,
raise the
yes,
voice.
yes, yes,
Voice. Okay.
yes,
So,
sir.
Mr. Sanket Vipul, request you to kindly check your speaker at your end because at my end, I feel that the voice is okay. So, thank you everybody for joining on this day when we are looking at a weekend and tomorrow is the auspicious event of Ganesh Chaturthi, uh, especially in the west and south. Uh, and as per our custom, we are starting exactly on time. A lot of more participants to join, and they would keep on joining as they are still joining in large numbers as we are starting this webcast. And but we want to keep strictly in adherence to the timings, so we are starting. Now, today's topic we have chosen as a pertinent topic in GST, as this would be the next major compliance change in GST, and it would be impacting, as of now, maybe only those companies with an aggregate turnover of more than 500 crores. But as per the intention of the government and as laid down in the roadmap, e-invoices would see light of day and would be applicable to all companies possibly in the next 3 to 6 months. That is what we get from the government side wherever we are going. So, friends, and along with e-invoicing, there would be changes in GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B. As we all know that the new forms ANX 1, 2 and RET 1, so all new forms which were about to be notified, they have been kept on hold, sine die. Expectedly, they may not see light of day, and changes would happen in GSTR 1 and 3B itself. So we thought as to club this with e-invoicing so as to make a holistic understanding of the subject matter. Also, since the GSTR 9 and 9C due date is, there are few teething problems, we would discuss some of these teething problems also and a solution to these problems. So, we would start with the most important topic out of the three, and for which I think we have all joined in large numbers in this workshop. That is e-invoicing. Now, friends, the biggest, I would say, thing to understand in e-invoicing or GST compliances is that now GST compliances for any taxpayer has to be an integrated compliance. Okay, so in contrast to what we got to understand in July 2017, that there would be one GST portal in which all the compliances would happen, that is not happening. And as of now, at least, we have 3 portals under GST to which we have to interact with, right? Now, first is the GST portal .gov.in, right, which the returns. Okay, I'm switching off my video because maybe there is a bandwidth issue. Avik, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Is my voice
Yes,
clear,
sir.
Avik?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
sir.
As I was saying, first is the GST portal on which you file the returns and do the ITC reconciliation. Next is the NIC portal for the e-way bill. And now in the e-invoicing arena, you would have to interact with yet another portal, that would be the invoice registration portal or the registrar of e-invoices, e-invoice 1, 2, 3, etc. for generation of e-invoices. Now, these 3 portals under GST, the GST portal, e-way bill portal, and IRP portal, they would also be interacting with one another, but to a very limited extent. And a lot of integrated reports would not be available from these. So first, for a large corporate or even for an SME who has a large volume of data under GST, the critical thing is to have to integrate all of these 3 portals, and so that all 3 portals interact with one portal, right? So the requirement is in these invoices, before we go into the subject matter and the technicalities, I would also show you how data analytics would help in the GST compliances. But for these GST compliances, for data analytics in GST, in e-way bill, IR invoice, e-invoice, or for return filing, it is very, very important that one should have all the data under GST at one place. How we are going to do that, that we will discuss in this webinar. So friends, to start with e-invoicing, as you know, the GST ecosystem, the GST network ecosystem, as of now, is like, or in the e-invoice arena would be, there would be a taxpayer. It was 100 lakhs, more than 100 lakh rupees, whose turnover is, he or the taxpayer would have to take a registration under GST. Now this taxpayer would have his own ERP. It may be SAP, it may be Microsoft Navision, it may be Tally, it may be Busy Software, it may be anything, right? And then there would be an ASP or GSP. Now this is not mandatory, this is optional. So this is the service provider or the software. The ERP would interact with the GST system, that is the GST portal, either directly or it would have to go through an ASP software, which would have all the data and which in turn would interact with the GST system. There are many GSPs, almost now 78 GSPs or so, which visibility you can get on the government's portal. They would have all the names of the GSPs. Now, as we said, what is the roles would be divided between the GSP, ASP and the ERP systems. The role of the ERP or the organizational enterprise management or the tax consultant or the tax professionals or the tax people in the organization, their role would be to compile the data or configure the data, to compute the tax, and to have GST ready output data, right? Then they would either directly post this GST ready output data to the GST network, or if they go through the GSP, then the GSP would make this output data ready for extraction. It would upload on the GST network and it would do necessary reconciliations and validations. So GSP would act as an interface in the ERP and the GST network. The question is, if you can go directly from your ERP to the GST network, why would you want a GSP or an ASP in between? The answer is for seamless flow of data, for validations, for error checking, and most important is for integration of the e-waybill and the GST portal into one portal, and for generation of reports of various kind to do analytics on the GST data of various kinds, so that the taxpayer is scrutiny ready. Whenever the tax officials would come for the audit or for the assessment, the taxpayer would be scrutiny ready with the help of this GSP. So this is the ecosystem in which we have been working. Now this ecosystem here, it changes into three. It expands actually. First is the GST portal, then is the e-invoice portal, and down is the IRP portal. ERP has to access and ERP has to provide data, and ERP has to talk with all three GST portals. Many a times these three GST portals now would not interact with each other. We will go through in the next 1 hour or so as to what are the cases where the three portals would not interact with each other. Therefore, if one has to integrate all the data in the three portals, one may take the help of a ASP or a GSP in between, which will help you to integrate all the data and to then interact with the GST portals. Now in e-invoice, what is e-invoicing? First of all, there are few myths of e-invoicing. The biggest myth, which normally the SME taxpayers understand, is that the e-invoice under GST has to be made on the GST portal or the IRP. This is a myth. The GST e-invoice would not be made on the IRP. It would still continue to be made in your ERP solutions, through your SAP, through your Navision software, through your Tally software, or whatever you have. Only the data, mind that, not the invoice itself, only the data of the invoice, that has to be pushed to the GST portal or the registrar of e-invoice, as it is called, the invoice registration portal. Now, I am using three terms: the GST portal for e-invoice, or IRP, that is invoice registration portal, or registrar of e-invoice. Friends, all of these three are the same. So for e-invoice, the government has made another portal under GST in addition to GST portal and the e-invoice portal, e-waybill portal, that is the invoice registration portal, which is www.einvoice123, like that. So wide notification, the government has notified 10 such IRP portals through which e-invoice would be generated. So just as you file the returns today, you upload the data of your returns on the GST portal. That very same way, now you upload the invoice details on the GST portal, and the GST portal gives you the e-invoice with 3 critical fields. So what is to be understood in e-invoice very, very clearly, most importantly, is what is the data one would provide to the IRP portal. This is the most critical element. If you understand what is the data and why is such data being provided to the IRP portal, then it would help you to understand the importance or the critical issues in e-invoice, and it would help you to ensure seamless generation of e-invoice, even if you are doing it directly or through a GSP. Mind that, friends, even if you are doing through an ASP GSP solution in e-invoice, it is just a software, and a software would act only on the basis of a human brain. So a software, if there is a garbage in, it would also do a garbage out, and there would be errors. So most important thing to understand, and which we'll discuss in detail in this webcast, is what are the validation checks, or what are the various details which the IRP needs. All your users who generate the invoices, right? All your users who are generating invoices need to be trained on this data so that they do not leave out any mandatory field, or they do not punch in certain data which is not as per the format, and do not incur an error while generating the e-invoice. As I said, the ASP or the IRP, they are just softwares. Most important person is the user who is punching in the data to generate the e-invoice. If the user is not well trained, then the system would throw up errors, and we would be at all at sea to understand why such error is happening. Many people ask me what is the purpose of e-invoice, and the fact that they see no utility of e-invoice. In fact, many of the taxpayers, large taxpayers, more than 500 crores, more than 3,000, 4,000 crores turnover, even they find it difficult to understand why the government is implementing e-invoice, especially in these tough times. Friend, you would know that before this lockdown has happened, in the month of say December 2019, January or February, these 3-4 months, there was wide tax evasion. Now, how that tax evasion was there? I will just, because we interact with the intelligence wings of the governments and the anti-evasions also for various issues, as we get to understand, the method of the tax evasion primarily was a person used to get himself registered with GST. The moment he registers with GST, he used to generate invoices to the extent of 100, 200 crores within days, within 2-3 days, because the purpose was tax evasion. And they used to supply these kind of invoices which were not genuine, along with services, to genuine taxpayers like you. Large companies had been defrauded due to this. Now the companies, they used to take these invoices in confidence, and the only check which such companies used to have is whether this invoice number and the details is appearing in the GSTR1 or not. The moment it used to appear in the GSTR1, they used to be confident that the invoice is genuine and they used to make the payment to these vendors, so-called vendors. However, such people waited filing the GSTR 3B or filed a 3B, taking excess ITC. And till the time the government got such analysis or the data from their intelligence wings, it was 3 to 4 months, and the taxpayers were not traceable. And in hindsight, the recipients of such invoices, they were put into hardship because under section 16(2) subsection C, the tax with respect to the invoices have to be paid for the recipients to take the input tax credit. So to prevent such malpractice, this e-invoice has come into being primarily. Of course, there are various other uses. Here, the moment a person generates an e-invoice, it has to be registered on the GST portal with a specific invoice number, QR code, etc. And such number, QR code, etc., that will be immediately going to the tax officials. Immediately such data would be tracked by the data intelligence wing, and in case it is seen that there is a large volume of data, large GST liability which is being generated at places, immediately the tax officials would know and they would be aware of such high transactions which are happening, and thus such malpractice could be checked at the very root. So amongst all the benefits, this is one of the purposes to prevent malpractice under GST and consequence tax evasion, which is the one of the most important purposes of e-invoice. Now from 1st October 2020, by notification 13/2020, read with notification 61/2020 CG Central Tax, e-invoices would be applicable on those taxpayers whose aggregate turnover in a financial year is more than 500 crores from 1st of October. Now the question is, the notification uses the word a financial year. The question is which financial year? So even the GST portal has laid it down, and it is a well accepted thing that it would take the last financial year which has completed. So one has to see whether the one's turnover in the financial year 1920 is more than 500 crores or not. If it is more than 500 crores, then the e-invoice would be applicable to them from 1st of October 2020. Mind that we are talking about aggregate turnover, which means PAN-based turnover. So it means the aggregate turnover of all the GSTINs belonging to a company with the same PAN number. It also means it will include stock transfers. So maybe the sale to third parties is only 400 crores. A company has got 10 registrations, and through these 10 registration, it has done sales to third parties, which is aggregating to 400 crores in financial year 1920. However, internally within these 10 registration, there is a stock transfer of 150 crores. Therefore, the total turnover or the aggregate turnover of such an SSE is 550 crores, and e-invoices would be applicable to them from 1st of October 2020. Such aggregate turnover would also include exempt turnover, nil rated turnover. So let us take an example. In case there is a milk producing company, it produces milk which is exempt as per GST. However, it also produces and sells butter, which is taxable under GST. The turnover of milk is, say, 550 crores. The turnover of butter is only 50 crores. But although this is aggregate turnover is more than 500 crores, therefore e-invoice would be applicable to them. The same with liquor companies, the same with other such companies who are dealing with exempt or non-GST goods or services. Now, by this diagram, we would understand what is the flow of e-invoicing. While it is a little blurred because this diagram was not available in Word, but we will go through this diagram one by one, slowly and steadily, so that one can grasp the flow of the data in e-invoicing, and thereafter we would go into advanced issues. Before going into advanced issues, it is important that one should understand in detail the flow of the data. So now, friends, there are 4 blocks you can see. First block, this one, this is the seller. A company, say A Limited, with a turnover of more than 500 crores. Now, this is the e-invoice portal, which is called the IRP, or the Invoice Registration Portal, or the e-invoice registrar, by whatever name you call it. This is the GST system, that is the GST portal or the e-way bill portal, right? And this is the recipient of the goods or services, right? Now this seller, first of all, as I said, there is no difference at the part of the seller except the punching in of data, which would be more elaborate. So this person seller, he punches in an invoice in his ERP system, right? Say for example, he is a seller of laptops. Now he sells 1,000 laptops in one invoice with various HSN codes, say 10 HSN codes. He punches in the invoice details in his ERP, say his SAP. So in his SAP, he punches in this data, right, of this invoice with 1,000 laptops at the rate of, say, 50,000 rupees each. The invoice value is 5 crore rupees. There are 10 HSN codes and there are 10 categories of items, right? So he punches in the invoice details, he punches in the laptop details, he punches in the seller's invoice number, GSTIN number, invoice date, recipient's GSTIN number, HSN code of the products, the taxable value, the taxes, total value, discount if any, etc., etc. This data he has to upload in a JSON file in the invoice registration portal, IRP. There are 10 IRPs which have been notified, right? So any one of the IRP, as of now, one will be live. Going forward, all 10 would be live. So any one of the IRP, invoice registration portal, he punches in his data or uploads the data in a JSON format, right? Now, this invoice registration portal, it would do 3 things, right? It would sign this entire JSON file with the IRP or the registrar's digital signature. It would do a deduplication check. Now, what is a deduplication check? It would check whether the same invoice number with the same invoice type in the same accounting period is available in the the GST portal or not for the same taxpayer. If the same taxpayer has generated an invoice or any document with the same document type, invoice number, and in the same financial year 2020-21, say, then it would reject with an error. It would also do a validation check. Say, for example, the date format, again, we would go through various validation checks, right? A lot of validation checks I would take you through in this webcast. So maybe say it does a validation check. The date format specified is DDMMYYYY. However, the invoice has got date format in DDMMYY. So then again, if such an error happens, it will throw back an error. It would also generate an IRN, invoice registration number. It would also digitally sign that JSON file, and it would generate a QR hash, QR code, quick response code, right? You would also you would be accustomed to seeing a QR code in your e-way bills. Now this QR code is also very interesting, and one must understand what is a QR code. I will take you through in detail what is a QR code. So it would generate a QR code, it would digitally sign the invoice, and it would give a 64-digit invoice reference number IRN, right? And it would throw back this JSON file. Such JSON file would have all these features, and it can be printed by the seller on a piece of paper. It can be made a PDF of, and he can send the e-invoice to the recipient of the goods or services. Simultaneously, it would also throw this data. The IRP would throw this data in the GST portal and update the GSTR1 of the seller, right? So this it would do at the front end with the seller. Another, it would also interact with the GST portal. And now, as I said, the GST portal would also be updated in the GSTR1 of the seller. At the buyer's end, the moment the GSTR1 gets updated of the seller, the GSTR2A of the buyer would get updated, right? So the moment an IRN is generated, the moment an e-invoice is generated, at that very moment, the GST portal would get updated, the 2A would get updated, and your commissioner, that is the seller's commissioner or the jurisdiction office, immediately would get, on a daily basis, it would get the tax liability, the output tax liability of the taxpayers, right? And simultaneously, the buyer would also get the 2A updated. It would not have to wait. The buyer would not have to wait for 1 month for the seller to upload his GSTR1. Immediately he would get to know, yes, there is a invoice which has been generated on our name. It would make the reconciliation process also easier. So this, friends, would be the total flow of the e-invoice, which one should keep in mind as we go on to the other issues. So one process, as I have told you, is that a manual process, right? Every invoice your user generates, say you are a company with a pan India, you have got 25 branches in 25 states. So all your users in all branches, either they manually make the, say you have an SAP system, the user makes the invoice on his SAP system, then takes an Excel download, and then manually uploads it in the IRP portal. And thereafter, the user gets back the data in JSON format, right? With a signed invoice, with an IRN and with a QR code. and he again uploads it to the ERP, because mind that your ERP also have to be updated with the IRN number and the other details of the e-invoice, right? So this is the manual process which can be followed, right? However, this is the automated process which one can also follow if one takes the help of a ASP or GSP solution provider, right? So the user would not know that there is an ASP or GSP in between, right? The user would not know that there is an ASP or GSP in between. The user would normally, like he does today, punch in his invoice data in his SAP system. There is an API integration which happens. This API integration, it throws the JSON file to the ASP GSP. The ASP GSP does the validation check so that to ensure that there is no error generated in the IRP. If it gets an error, it throws back to the ERP and the user knows there is an error. It rectifies the error and again punches in the data in the ERP and it flows to the ASP GSP. The ASP GSP again does a validation check, a deduplication check, and it sends the data to the IRP. The IRP generates an IRN, digitally signs, generates a QR code, throws it back to the ASP GSP. The ASP GSP stores all this historical data for unlimited period of time, and it generates various kinds of reports, which I would take you through. And it throws back this JSON file to the ERP. The ERP also gets updated with the IRN number, the 64-digit IRN number, that is invoice reference number, and the user can generate the e-invoice in a PDF format. All of this process happens in a matter of 6 to 8 seconds, right? So the moment the user punches in the data in the ERP, from that time to he gets back the e-invoice, it happens in a period of 6 to 8 seconds, right? Now, what are the legal provisions with respect to e-invoice? The mother notification is 68/2019, dated 13th of December 2019. While this notification, Rule 48 was amended and Rule 48.4 was inserted. This Rule 48, Sub-Rule 4, provided that the government would notify a schema in form GST INV1. In fact, if you would remember in the model laws, this GST INV1 was the invoice format which was suggested. If you remember, you see in 2016 November, the revised model law had come, and in that model law they had notified this, they had proposed this INV1. So this GST INV1 has come back. What is INV1? GST INV1 form is the schema. What is the schema? The schema is the details. There are around 139 kind of details or data which would be required either mandatorily or optionally by the e-invoice. So that schema or that format is called GST INV1, which is notified by notification number 60/2020. We would come to that notification. Friends, it is very important to note that after 1st of October, any invoice other than an e-invoice generated by IRP would not be a valid invoice, right? So in case, now we feel being a SME taxpayer, or if we are buying products, we feel that e-invoice is not applicable to us. It is again another myth, because in some way or the other, if we are running a business, we are buying goods from large companies, or we are buying goods of large companies. We are dealing with one or the other large company, whose turnover is more than 500 crores, right? 500 crores aggregate turnover is not at all a big number. It is a very, very common number, and you would be dealing with one or the other companies whose turnover would be more than 500 crores. And if you are buying goods or services from such companies and they do not provide you an e-invoice, then you, as a recipient of such goods or service, would be debarred from taking the ITC. And if you take such ITC on such invoices, which are not e-invoices, from the companies whose turnover is more than 500 crores, then you would lose the input tax credit on such invoices. So it is important that we as SMEs also understand the e-invoicing process. What is the pattern? What would be the document which would be shared with us, so that we are not under any hardship? So these, by notification 69/2019, 10 in IRP portals have been notified by the government: www.einvoice1.gst.gov.in, and like that 1 to 10. As of now, possibly one of these would be operational, but slowly there would be 10 operational. This portal will never sleep. It would be open 24/7 at all the times. This portal would not be a data center. It would not hold any data for more than 24 hours. So it would be an absolutely empty portal, and it would just be a generating portal, a portal which would generate an e-invoice, and that is it. It would do nothing else, right? Therefore, it is understood by the government that there would not be any teething problems like we saw in e-way bill. And mind that the NIC, National Informatics Center, which had developed e-way bill portal, and now they are comfortable with e-way bill portal, that same agency has developed this IRP portal, and therefore we expect that the e-invoice would not see much teething problems as far as the software part is concerned. Notification number 70/2019, it has been superseded by 13/2020, again superseded by 61/2020, and whereby any registered person whose aggregate turnover is more than 500 crores, he or that taxpayer would be liable to generate e-invoice from 1st October 2020. Notification, again, this INV form, that is the e-invoice schema, which we would go through. This has seen various changes, right? So by notification 2/2020, it was notified, then again now it has been changed by notification number 60/2020, right? So 60/2020, that is the notification which gives the final e-invoice schema. It may or may not change in future. Why I say this? Friends, if you have an ERP like SAP, like Navision, or any big ERP, Oracle, etc. Now, as a corporate who is taking the services of e-invoice generation, you have to negotiate with these software providers or the ERP service providers. They would amend the ERP as of now as per this schema. Now your contract with this software provider should be such that there should be a hand-holding for minimum 1 year. Because within this 1 year, even if one field in this schema is amended, then your service provider should not charge you extra, because one field in a schema, if it is changed, it would require a lot of changes to be done at the ASP GSP level as well as the ERP level. Therefore, your contract with this ERP service provider should take into account this fact that this schema has already changed twice. It may see a small or few changes in the coming 1 year or so, and your ERP may require further changes. Your ASP GSP service provider again would require to change their format of the schema, and that is not a mean task. It would take some doing. E-invoice wide notification 13/2020, again as amended by 61/2020 to a certain limited extent, would not be applicable to companies whose aggregate turnover is less than 500 crore. It would not be applicable to GTAs, to service providers providing services of transportation of passengers by goods, to insurance companies, to banking companies, to NBFCs, and to taxpayers located in SEZ. This SEZ has been exempted by notification 61/2020. Now, as we have discussed over the last half an hour or so, I have been stressing a lot on this schema, right? And this is the most critical aspect in e-invoicing to understand. Why this looks a little scary, but once you get the hang of the logic of this schema, I can tell you it would become an easy read, and as a tax professional in job or in practice or in a corporate, it would add a lot of value while implementing and while interacting with your operations department, while implementing and while seamlessly dealing with e-invoice. So friends, this schema, first of all, there are 4 types of cardinals which have to be understood, right? 4 types of rules which have to be understood, right? There are very simple 4 rules. First rule, you see there are cardinal numbers over here. 1.1.1, 0.1, 0.0, etc. It would come 0.n, 1.n, which would come in future. So these numbers have a deep meaning, right? To understand the schema, it is important that you understand this cardinality. The moment a cardinal number starts with 0, it means it is an optional field, right? If it ends with a 1, it means it cannot be repeated, right? If it starts with 0, it is an optional field. If it starts with 1, it is a mandatory field. If it starts with 0 or 1 and ends with 1, it means such field cannot be repeated. Again, if it starts with 0 or 1 and it ends with n, it means the field can be repeated. So 4 permutations, as you can see. If it starts with 0 and ends with 1, it means it is an optional field, but such field cannot be repeated. Say, for example, you have a purchase order, right? This purchase order is an optional field. You may or may not punch in the purchase order number, and even if you do not punch in, the e-invoice would be generated, but you cannot repeat the purchase order number again. However, if it starts with 1, it means it is a field which is mandatory. You cannot leave that field blank, and it cannot be repeated. Like for example, invoice number. One invoice number cannot be repeated again, and it is a mandatory field. If it starts with 1 and ends with n, it means it is a field which is mandatory and it can be repeated n number of times. For example, if you are punching in a credit note and you are required to punch in the earlier invoice number or the original invoice number, it is a mandatory field. However, there can be one invoice which can be linked with various credit notes. So it can be repeated again. If it starts with 0 and it ends with n, it means it is an optional field which can be repeated n number of times. Like for example, any particular reference number, document reference number. It is an optional field, right? It is not the document number behind that or not your invoice number. It is any document number, right? For example, maybe a trader can have his internal stock transfer note number separately. So it is a document number and it can be repeated n number of times, right? So 4 kinds of permutations, and with this understanding, we go ahead with understanding the schema. Friends, why I am taking you through this schema in detail is because when you are implementing e-invoice, you should take a printout of this notification 60-20-20 and keep it in your diary. If your user punches, first of all, you have to make a checklist out of this, right? Not in such a complicated form. You have to simplify it for the user, right? And you have to tell him, boss, these are mandatory fields. You have to also tell him what is the length of this field. You have to also tell him what are the precautions to be taken in this field. This is the check which your IRP portal or your ASP GSP would be doing. So your user training would involve making all the user completely expert in this schema, right? In a simplified form. Now, let us start. First of all is this section. This section number 1. It is called basic details, right? And see what is the cardinal value. It is 1.1, which means it is a mandatory field and it can be used only once, right? So it is mandatory. Now, in these basic details, there are 8 kind of requirements, right? Order number, right? Number, there are 4 versions, right? This your ERP service provider would let you know. There are 4 version numbers and it is a mandatory field and it cannot be repeated again and again. It can be used only once. So you cannot, for the same invoice, naturally you cannot use 4 types of forms, right? There are various form A, B, C, D. And the string length is 6. So if the string length, that is if the number of digits in this field is more than 6, then it would throw up an error. So again, this your ERP vendor would itself take care of this point. It would build in, the ERP would build in a function whereby the string field in this requirement would not take more than 6 characters, right? Next is 1.1, again mandatory and cannot be repeated. This is IRN, invoice reference number. Mind that this IRN, the seller need not provide. It is mandatory. The string length is 64, right? And this is the invoice reference number. We'll come to this again. I'll show you how an IRN would look like. Again, supply type code, right? Now, what is this supply type code? You go to the details. The supply type would be B2B, B2C, SEZ without payment of tax, with payment of tax, SEZ without payment of tax, export with payment, without payment, and deemed export. So there can be 7 options in the supply type. Again, it is mandatory and it cannot be repeated, right? So now, why is this required? Because e-invoice would be mandatory only for this 7 kind of documents, right? Or a credit note, debit note. However, it would not be required for B2C, right? So business to consumer, B2C invoices, e-invoice would not be applicable. So B2C invoices, it would be mandatory that you do not punch in the IRP. Otherwise, it would throw up an error. And if a user punches in lot of B2C invoices in the IRP, maybe such user would get disabled or blocked by the IRP. So again, in e-invoice implementation, this is a very, very critical point. You must note this. How, if you're going for API integration, or even if you're going for manual upload, how would you prevent this your user to not punch in B2C invoices in your IRP or an ASP GSP? Because if you are using an ASP GSP, naturally the ASP GSP would take care of this point, so that B2C invoices do not flow to the IRP. However, if you are uploading it through a manual upload, one has to prevent your user from putting in this B2C and punching it in the IRP portal. Now, 1.3 document type code. What is the document type code? Again, it is mandatory, cannot be repeated. The document type would be INV. INV stands for invoice, credit note, debit note, right? As I said, there are only 3 types of documents which are under e-invoicing: bill of supply, delivery challan, self-invoicing, refund voucher, receipt voucher. All of these are not a part of e-invoicing as of now. Document number, it is again mandatory. This document number is actually the invoice number, right? So it is mandatory, and as per rule 46, the length of an invoice cannot be more than 16, right? Document date, that is invoice date, it is mandatory, cannot be repeated. Additional currency. Now this is, see here, while the basic details we saw, over here we saw basic details, this whole block is mandatory. So the moment you choose this block, the moment you choose this, all of these fields will be updated. However, even in this mandatory block 1.6, that is additional currency field, it remains optional. What is this additional currency? For export invoices, the GST law gives you an option. In fact, it is always suggested that you make the invoice for GST and for FEMA purposes combined. In the earlier central excise, there were 2 kinds of invoices for export. One was the central excise invoice as per the central excise rule 9, and there was a commercial invoice in foreign exchange as per FEMA regulations. Now it is always suggested that you make one invoice and in that you disclose both kind of currency values. So this additional currency, it is an option. If you're generating export invoices, you can add this currency field over there if you want to. Reverse charge, again optional. Say you are a service provider who is providing the services of sponsorship, where the tax has to be paid on a reverse charge basis by the recipient. So reverse charge, you can say yes or no. However, even if you do not say anything, you keep this field blank. It is optional. The system will not throw an error. Now this is very, very, it is not applicable to you, right? However, it is a change which has come vis-a-vis the old schema. IGST applicability despite supplier and recipient located in the same state. Now, what is this? Again, this is an optional field, right? Okay. And the string length is 1. So you can either say yes, no, or say nothing. Even if you say nothing, nothing will happen. So IGST applicability, even if the supplier and recipient are located in the same state. When does this happen? It happens under section 10 subsection 1 clause B of the IGST Act, where it is a bill to ship to transaction. You are located, say, in Maharashtra, your customer is located in Andhra Pradesh, and your recipient, your customer's customer is located again in Maharashtra. You move the material from Maharashtra to Maharashtra, say Mumbai to Mumbai. However, you bill to our AP and ship to Maharashtra. Therefore, while the recipient or the ship to state would be Maharashtra, yet you would charge IGST, and then again the AP person would charge an IGST to the Mumbai recipient. So this is an additional field. It is optional. Possibly in future, after this e-invoice becomes streamlined, it would be made mandatory. This, as far as we understand, is for the internal government purpose. Because you see, the revenue of the state government depends upon destination-based consumption principle. So as I have discussed, if the supply is located in Mumbai, recipient located in Mumbai, customer located in AP, consumption is happening in Maharashtra, the money, that is the GST, would go only and only to the state government of Maharashtra. And therefore, however, the mechanism of getting the money by Maharashtra would be a little twisted. The GST revenue would first go to AP on the basis of place of supply and then come back to Maharashtra. So possibly this is a control mechanism put in by the government in e-invoicing, so that in case this field is captured, they can cross-check the revenue of the states. Mind that it is for only this bifurcation of revenue that GST was delayed by 7 to 8 years, because it was very difficult for the governments to decide which state government would get how much of revenue and what would be the modalities. So now they have bought it, this principle in the e-invoice itself. So they don't want to wait for any return, anything. They want that the moment a consumption happens in the country, immediately the state governments keep on knowing whether it is their revenue or not. So block 1, basic details, gone. Now block 2, document period. Document start and document end period. Again, it is optional. The whole block is optional. But if you choose this block, you may choose to ignore this block completely. But if you choose this block, then document start and end date you have to put in. Preceding document or contract reference, right? So preceding document, again, this whole block is optional. Say, for example, you want to give a contract reference or a PO reference, right? You can choose this. If you don't choose this, if you don't select the whole block, nothing will happen. But if you choose this block, then preceding document number is mandatory, date is mandatory, right? 3.2, again, if you choose that block, receipt contract references optional, all other details are optional. So if you choose this block, preceding document or contract reference, even if it is optional, if you choose this optional, then you have to mandatorily put in these two fields. And mind that here again, you need to do a twist in your ERP. If your contract reference number, that is your contract reference, which your ERP picks up is more than 16 digit, you have to limit it to 16 digit, and even the date format should be as per the e-invoicing format DD, MM, YY. Project reference, again, it is an optional, again for EPC service provider. It may require PO reference or project reference. It is optional, but if you choose this optional information, again, even if you choose this optional information by default, but if you don't put anything also, it would not show an error. Supplier information. Now, this is 1.1. It is a mandatory field, cannot be repeated. Now, supplier legal name. So if A company is supplying to B, this B, the name would be mandatory. String is 100. So the supplier's name should not be more than 100 characters. If it is more than 100 characters, possibly you have to tweak in the characters. Again, legal name is mandatory. Many a times you have seen proprietorship firms. Proprietorship firms, the legal name is the PAN name. Say, for example, Mr. Vikash Paul is running a organization, proprietorship organization under the name of Apex International, right? So Vikash Paul is mandatory, that is the legal name is mandatory. Trade name, that is Apex International, that is optional. Even your GST registration has these kind of details. Supplier GSTIN is mandatory, address is mandatory. Mind that supplier address is only 100 characters, so your ERP should limit it. Supplier address 2, supplier place is mandatory. Important thing is that supplier place will be location of city, village, etc. State code is mandatory. Now, again, here there is a change as per vis-a-vis the old schema. Previously, they used to get the name, but now they need the code, state code. So state code has to be built in your ERP and your ASP in such a way that the moment you choose a state, the ERP automatically puts in the state code. Otherwise, again, the e-invoice schema, the IRP may throw up an error. Supplier PIN code, phone number. Supplier PIN code is mandatory. Why? To generate the e-way bill and to generate the distance automatically. So it would take the pin distance to the pin distance, right? For generation of e-way bill and to see the validity of the e-way bill. Supplier phone number, email ID, again are optional fields. Block 5, recipient information. Now, this is the recipient information, that is the ship to details. So legal name is mandatory, same like suppliers, right? Pay information. So if you want to put in your bank details, it is a completely optional block, right? If you want, you can put in your bank information, etc. So that on your invoice, if you want, you can put in your bank information automatically and it would happen on your invoices. You can also choose to put it only on the printed invoice, not to clogger your e-invoice a lot. Delivery information, again, bill to ship to. If you are doing a bill to ship to transaction, then you have to choose this. However, if it is a bill to and ship to is also to the same person, then you may not choose this. But if you choose this, then all of these fields become mandatory. Document total, item list, item invoice details, etc. Extra information, it is optional, right? However, if you choose this, you have to show the tax scheme. What is a tax scheme? Whether it is a non-GST supply, exempt supply, no supply, etc. All others, port code, remarks, shipping bill number, etc. All of these are optional in the optional table itself. Again, additional supporting documents, all optional, right? If you want, as per your ERP, additional supporting URL, you want to give the URL somewhere for whereby the recipient can generate the invoice again, you can put it, and it is an optional field. E-way bill details. Now, e-way bill details, it is an optional field. You would ask, why is this field an optional field? It should be mandatory. The answer is, many a times you would not generate an e-way bill if the value of the goods is less than 50,000 rupees. You would not generate an e-way bill for services. You would not want to generate an e-way bill now. You generate a part A, send it to the transporter generates the part B. So all of these permutations are there. That is why e-way bill table is optional. However, if you choose this, then the transporter's distance is mandatory. Transporting distance is mandatory, right? All other fields are optional. E-way bill details, again, sorry. Ship to details, again, it is optional. If there is no ship to, don't choose it. However, if you choose it, you have to give the address, you have to give the ship to place, PIN code, state code. Dispatch from details, again, if you have a warehouse somewhere, you are generating the invoice somewhere, you add the dispatch from details so that the invoice, the material can move from somewhere else. It is optional. If there is a dispatch for details, then you choose it. But if you choose it, dispatch from name, that is the entity which is dispatching, address, and all other place, state code and PIN code, all become mandatory. Right? All other details are there: serial number, item description, etc., etc., unit of measurement. All of these are mandatory. Serial number of item description is optional, while most of you would be using it. Is it service? This is a mandatory. This is very important. So whether it is goods or service, if it is service, then you do yes. If it is goods, you do no. It is a mandatory field. So mandatory in mandatory, which means you would always have to, you have to train your user. And boss, you have to always put in this. If they do not punching anything over here, your ERP should be made in such a way that it shows an error at the ERP level itself. HSN code is mandatory. String length is 8. However, you can put in 4 to 8 digits. Now, string length is the maximum length. You can always put in a smaller length string. Item price is mandatory, whether there is any free quantity, unit of measurement, barcode, etc. would all be optional. Again, 1.1, this table is mandatory. In this, sorry, this is the other items only. So gross amount is mandatory. Item discount, there may or may not be a discount, so it is optional. Taxable value is mandatory. GST rate is mandatory. Now, important thing with GST rate is you should not put in 9 and 9 if it is an intrastate supply. So no need to distinguish between CGST and SGST. You just put in the IGST rate. If it is IGST, the system would calculate 18. If it is intrastate, it would calculate 9 and 9 itself. Compensation says details again are optional. Document total details, all of these are optional. Document total details is mandatory, right? Batch number, again, it may or may not be there. If you are a trader, generally there is no batch number. However, if there is a batch number, you choose these details, but if you have batch details, then you have to put in a batch number, right? So friends, as I said, this is the INV1 schema, right? And this schema is notified by notification 60/2020. And this has to be understood and your users have to be trained with this schema. At least the mandatory fields do's and don'ts you must have for your user, like for all our clients. Now we have already started giving the users do's and don'ts. Even currently, what we are doing is we are the e-invoice, the ARP, we are checking all the invoice. If any user is not putting in mandatory fields in the current invoices also, we have started training them. So first round of training for your users who are the most critical elements of this e-invoice system, the training should happen now itself, right? With a clear do's and don'ts. Mandatory fields should be understood by all your users with the string length and the understanding as to what to put in those mandatory fields. So 61/2020 is the notice for applicability of e-invoice to those users whose turnover is to all those registered persons whose turnover is more than 5 crores. Critical issues in e-invoices. So as we have discussed, what are the documents covered in e-invoice? Presently, it is B2B invoices, export invoices, credit note, and debit notes. So four documents are presently covered under e-invoice. What are the transactions which are covered in e-invoice? There are 7 kind of transactions to understand, right? Or 6 kind of transaction. B2B, export, credit note, debit note, SEZ, SEZ without payment, with payment, export with payment and without payment, right? Is e-invoice mandatory for B2C? Now, e-invoice is not mandatory for B2C. In fact, as I have said earlier, your ERP and your ASP or GSP, if you are using any ASP or GSP, like our GSP is Velocis. So in our GSP itself, in Velocis, if you see, it does not let B2C invoices pass to the IRP. So your ASP or GSP should be such that it should have an internal control. It will, the IRP will throw up an error. And if multiple B2Cs are pushed to the IRP at multiple times, then the GSTIN may be blocked also from generating further e-invoices. So one must be very careful about this B2C supplies or B2C documents. For import bill of entries, e-invoicing is not mandatory. It's not applicable at all also, because how would a foreign service provider or goods provider supply with an e-invoice? Entities which are exempt from e-invoice, SEZ, insurance or banking companies including NBFC, GTA, suppliers of passenger transportation service, suppliers of services by way of admission to exhibition or cinematograph films, that is all these malls and all these PVRs, etc. They are not required to generate any e-invoice, even though it may be there may be a B2C, B2B transaction. As I said, IRP will not store any data for more than 24 hours. It would only be a pass-through mechanism. It will pass through the IRN, generate the IRN and hash QR code and digitally sign the invoice, and it would let the invoice pass through. It will not store the invoice at all. Entity logo. So if your company has got a logo, the e-invoice portal or the IRP would not put in any logo. However, you can customize your ASP, GSP, and they would put in the logo, and automatically the moment your user gets it in his ERP, he can generate the invoice directly without thinking about logos or any other customization. So how would an E in IRN look like? So this is a sample of an IRN, right? You would have seen this earlier. So this would be an IRN. Now one taxpayer was asking me that in future, the GSTR 2A reconciliation, will it be IRN or can it be IRN to IRN? So like today, you are doing the GSTR 2A reconciliation with your purchase register and you are matching invoice number as per 2A with your invoice number. Can it be IRN to IRN? The answer is maybe. In future, maybe IRN to IRN would be done because when all the taxpayers would be required to generate invoice at least for B2B transactions, then an IRN to IRN matching may be done, but yes, not now. Can an IRP reject the submitted invoice? We have discussed, yes, it can throw up errors and reject the invoice. If it rejects an invoice, the same invoice number can again be uploaded without change after changing the errors. How will the QR code be received? Now, as I said in the beginning of this webcast, QR code is not what you see on your e-bill. Actually, QR code just a jumbled of information which you provide. All right. So QR code which you see on your e-invoice, it would not be a it will not be a QR code per se. It would be a jumble of information. I would show you what information would be there and how your QR code actually would be, what information would be available in your QR code. How to verify an invoice? Whether an invoice is reported to an IRP, there would be mobile apps whereby you can scan the QR code and it would show whether the IRN is genuine or not. So 8 informations which would make up your QR code. This is very important, right? What would your QR code consist of? Your GST number, your recipient's GST number, invoice number. Mind that, again, a myth is that IRN is your invoice number. This is not right. IRN is not your invoice number. Your invoice number generated by your ERP continues to be your invoice number. IRN is an additional hash created number by a hash function, right? IRN is not your invoice number. Your invoice number should be disclosed separately in your invoice. Date of generation of invoice, invoice value, number of line items, HSN code of the main line item with the maximum taxable value, and unique IRN. So these 8 data would be there in your QR code, right? GSTIN of the supplier, recipient, invoice number, date of generation of invoice, invoice value, number of items, HSN code of main item, and IRN. How would now, friend, we will come to this. Before that, I will show you how a QR code would look like. So this is what consists of your QR code. It would be in the form of a JWT and it has 3 parts. You can see the 3 parts are separated by red dots. So this is the first part, this is the second part, and this is the third part. So all your information, those 8 kind of information which I showed you, all of that would be jumbled up and this would form a part of your QR code. When you scan this QR code, it would come like this, right? Your IRN number, etc., etc., your GSTIN number, recipient's GSTIN number, all of invoice date, document type, document number, all of this would be coming as like this, right? Now, friends, this is another very, very important item which all the entities should take care of. White Notification 72/2019. But QR code is required to be published on the invoice by all registered taxpayers whose aggregate turnover is more than 500 crores. Now, this QR code would be required on the B2C invoices, and it is applicable from 1st of April 2020. So, if not done on B2C invoices for all these taxpayers, it is mandatory to put in a QR code with all of these details. This is very, very critical, right? Cancellation of a reported invoice. So if you have two items in your invoice, can you cancel one item? Answer is no. If you have to cancel the whole e-invoice and not partially. IRN we have discussed. As of now, as we discussed, there would be only one registered registrar or IRP portal. There would be 9 others, that is 10 IRP portals going forward. So friends, now we have discussed this e-invoice in details. We would take in some questions, but before that, we would come to our other topics of the day for in brief, and we would take you through the data analytics in ASP GSP service provider. So what is the benefit, as we discussed, that the most important benefit of an ASP GSP is that it integrates all the 3 GST portal data. For example, I will give you an example. After e-invoicing, or even today, when you generate an e-way bill, there has to be the tax authorities during assessments would want and are wanting a reconciliation between your GSTR1 and e-way bill. How would you get that? As of now, the GST e-invoice, the e-way bill portal, it gives the e-way bill details of only 5 days at a time. So if you have to reconcile GSTR1 with e-invoice generated, only an ASP GSP can provide you a seamless support. Again, for matching of 2A, there can be various kind of data analytics which can come in picture, right? Just to give few examples. Match. The whole GSTR 2A versus 3B, if all the fields match, it has to accept. Mismatch. Your details can mismatch. Maybe if you have done a mistake at a ERP level, so you have put in, the supplier has put in the right invoice number, you have put in a wrong invoice number, it would throw up a mismatch. If it throws up a mismatch, you have to change your purchase register, right? While you can do the matching, you have to change your purchase register. Also, your data analytics or artificial intelligence should throw up probable matches. If all other fields are matching, the supplier, GSTIN, etc. is matching, taxable value, everything is matching, only the invoice number is not matching, then the data analytics or artificial intelligence in a GSP should throw up your probable matches. And if you match it, then again it should make a change in your purchase register data, which on the other end should flow back through to your ERP. Again, if say you are a multi-state PAN registered person, multi-state GST registered person with a single PAN, it may so happen a supplier supplies material to your Himachal Pradesh GSTIN, but wrongly he puts in your GSTIN for the state of Rajasthan. So your Rajasthan 2A matching would show a mismatch. Your Himachal Pradesh 2A matching would show a mismatch. So a GSP artificially, it would do a PAN-wise matching, PAN to PAN, and it should throw up a probable match that these two, everything else is matching except GSTIN. And do you want to match it? Is there a mistake? So if you accept it, it will show up a matching. And If you do not accept it, you can mail from the GSP ASP portal itself to the supplier that, gentlemen, you have made a mistake, please change your invoice, right? Missing in 2A. Now again, if some invoices are there in your purchase register, but it is totally missing in 2A, which means the supplier may not have filed his details, it can throw up in a separate bucket. Again, buckets are very, very important part of data analytics. So it can throw up a bucket missing in 2A, and you can select the supplier and send all the details to that supplier of missing in 2A, that, gentlemen, you please put it, you file your GSTR1 and 3B, only then we will make the payment. Missing in purchase register, again, it can be due to goods in transit, so that the ASP GSP identifies. Again, range selection, range-wise matching. You may require to match few months due to an assessment notice. You may require to do a 2A matching for a whole financial year. For 2 financial years combined, all of these should be available in your GSP. Tolerance level, there may be a difference of, say, 10 rupees in the taxable value or the GST amount. But if you set up a tolerance limit, then it would accept, the GSP would accept those invoices and matched, right? Vendor status, this is the one of the most important thing, as I discussed, that how frauds have happened in GST. The vendor files his GSTR1, you do the matching with your 2A, it matches and you pay the vendor. The vendor does not file his GSTR3B. So before making any payment to the vendor, you must ensure that the vendor has filed all his 3Bs, or at least 3B of that period. And this would be a separate report, vendor filing status report. There can be various other filters. Say you want to know the top 20 mismatches or top 100 mismatches. The portal, if it has all the data, as I said, if it is integrated solution, then it can throw up all of these kind of data analytics and artificially matched or unmatched items. Classification based on logic, as I talked about buckets. What are the invoices where there is only a rate difference? All other things are matching. What are the invoices where only the invoice numbers are mismatching? Everything else is matching. Again, for e-way bills, data analytics can show up an e-way bill for the company as a whole. Say you are registered in 25 states. You want to know for the company as a whole, how much of e-way bills have been generated, how many are pending Part 8 for generation, how many are pending for Part B generation, how many there are errors, how many e-way bills you have cancelled, how many you have rejected by other party, how many are pending, then whether your e-way bills is due for expiry or not in the next 24 hours, so that you can extend the e-way bills. Okay. You can extend the e-way bills only 4 hours before or after the expiry time. So your GSP and artificially should automatically increase the expiry time of the e-way bill, even though the expiry happens at 12 o'clock at night. So friends, there are various other data analytics and artificially intelligently matching and reconciliation. However, as I said in the very beginning, that for this, it is important that you integrate all your data at one place. Data of 3B or data of GST portal, data of IRP portal, data of NIC e-way bill portal. And if it is integrated, it can do so much of data analytics. And as we have discussed, that GST is a compliance-based law, right? If your compliances in your company are robust, then there is no question that you are scrutiny ready at any time. GSP provides you through data analytics, artificial intelligence, and validation checks. It provides you that integration of all the 3 GST portals, which would make you scrutiny ready. Our next topic is what are, as we have discussed, that with the implementation of e-invoice, the GSTR 3B and GSTR 1 would also see a change. So what are the expected changes in GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B? Right? And for which, as a taxpayer or as a registered person, especially as a large taxpayer, if you are one multi-state registered, one must be ready. So while some information we have got from sources, some information we have compiled ourselves from our historical experience, some information we have gathered as to what was there in ANX 1, ANX 2 and RET 1, which is not there or expected to be there in 3B and 1. First of all, friend, the important expected change in GSTR 1 and 3B would be that as of now, you are just reporting few figures in GSTR 3B. It would now be an elaborate return as we expect. The reverse charge, party-wise reverse charge details would be required while compiling 3B information. There would be more tables added to 3B. So for example, if today you are taking the services of 5 transporters, all are under reverse charge. So today you disclose in table number 4A3 for ITC availed and table number 3.1D of GSTR 3B, the output supply, so the outward tax payment. Now this would require party-wise at least mentioning. As you know, in ANX 1, same information was required. So party-wise and GSTN-wise, reverse charge reporting may see the light of day. So we must be prepared. Our ERP should be prepared internally so that once this change comes, we can cater to the compliance norms. While on this topic, friends, while talking about non-compliances, you see, we had done the GST audit of 17-18 of large companies, and we were always telling them that in 4D, the information of ineligible ITC, by and large, all companies where we have seen, they had reported 0 or nil in 4D of GSTR 3B. What is 4D? Ineligible ITC. It was just a disclosure norm, right? But all companies, they could not track this ineligible ITC and therefore they disclose 0. But it is important to note that 0 is also a figure. Therefore, it is very important now in this. Now, Karnataka Commissionerate or Kerala Commissionerate has issued a notice, a trade notice, that this ineligible ITC column, that is 4D of GSTR 3B, should mandatorily filled. Otherwise, their internal revenue distribution between center and state is going for a 6. So friends, it is very important that GSTR 1 and 3B, all columns, wherever data is required, we must not take it lightly. We must be prepared and prepare such data. If we are not prepared, we must ensure that going forward, we must prepare the data and so that there is no non-compliance which would come and hit us during assessments. Second expected change in 1 and 3B is that party-wise transaction of reverse charge on import of services, right? So on import of services in table 3.1c and 4.8.2, you need to just disclose one figure. Now, there may be an invoice-wise details which would be required. Third is mandatory bill of entry-wise details. Now, this is there in the making from a long time now. So ITC on import of goods may be required to be disclosed bill of entry wise. As it is across the country, all the commissionerate are required bill of entry wise details during all scrutinies. So this would be the next change which would expected in GSTR 1 and 3B. GSTR 1 and 3B is expected to be linked together also. So whatever outward supply details are there in 1, it would get auto-populated in 3B. 2A and 2B. Now this 2B form is very, very interesting. 2B would freeze your 2A data to the extent of all the suppliers who are filing their GSTR 1 in time. So to take an example, you can take the input tax credit only of those suppliers who file their GSTR 1 on time. GSTR 2B will have only those credits in a month where the supplier has filed his GSTR 1 in time. So going forward, it is expected that in your 3B, you can take the credit of only those suppliers which are reflected in your GSTR 2B. And mind that while we are trying and while this 36(4) rule limiting the ITC to 110% of the 2A value, it is there in the high courts being challenged. Yet it is understood from the government that even this 10% cushion would go off in the long run, and only that ITC would be available, which is appearing in 2B, for which the counterparts have filed their GSTR 1 on time. Provisional summary of GST liability would get auto-populated. As we said from GST, it is very simple. The moment you do your GSTR 1, your outward tax liability would get auto-populated. The moment your supplier files his GSTR 1, your input tax credit would get auto-populated, and a provisional summary would get auto-populated. Outward liability minus inward liability, and it would get auto-populated. Then that would be a provisional summary. If you want to use that, great. Otherwise, you can make a change of that. Counterparty filing status. Very, very critical, as we discussed. Section 16(2)(c) would be taken care of, where counterparty 3B filing details would be auto-populated. Expected changes in GSTR 1 and 3, the ITC ineligible to be disclosed, as we had discussed. IceGate going forward would be linked to 3B. Provisional summary of GST liability, this we have discussed. Interest. As of now, interest due to late payment of taxes is not calculated. Would be required to be, it may be calculated now by the system itself. Interest due to 180 days delay of payment to the vendors or due to time of supply in case of reverse charge invoices. You know, for reverse charge, you have got a time period of 60 days for payment of the liability. So that would require to be disclosed in 3B going forward possibly. We have already discussed GSTR 2B. This is a new feature in the GST portal. As we all know, in GSTR 9, table number 8A, it auto-populates the 2A details. However, many a times there are errors, and since the details on basis of which 8A was filled up was not available, reconciliation was difficult. Now, the GST portal has got the backup of the 8A which can be downloaded. Now, friends, the last topic of the day, I would discuss two critical issues in GSTR 9 and 9C and the solution to it. First issue is on outward supplies. We would discuss by means of an example for better understanding. Say now, by Circular 26/2017, you can disclose any figure which is missed out in one 3B, you can disclose it in the next 3B and pay the taxes. Similarly, any invoice missed out in one GSTR 1, can be disclosed in the next GSTR 1 and you can pay your taxes along with interest. Now, in the GSTR 9 of 2017-18, say your output supply was 100 as per your returns. However, as per your sales register, the output supply was for 17-18 was 120. So in your GSTR 9, what you did was you disclosed 100 in table number 4 and 20 in this table number 10 and 11. Now come GA 2018-19. This 20 is reflecting in 18-19 return, right? So the question is, there is no place to show these 17-18 figures which are reflecting in 18-19 returns in GSTR 9. So what we suggest is that in table 4 of GSTR 9, you disclose 120 only. However, you make the necessary, you in your table number 5 of GSTR 9C, there would be a difference of 20 between your return and your books, which would disclose 100, and your 9 by 20 rupees. And that 20 rupees you disclose as an unreconciled item in table number 6 of GSTR 9C. So this is the what we suggest for the outward supply part. Now, similar problem you can face in the inward supply or ITC part. Let us take an example again for better understanding. Say, for example, your purchase as per purchase register in 17-18 was 300. Your return as per the 3B returns, your purchase or ITC available was 200. So you disclosed in GSTR 9 table 6B, you disclosed 200, and 100 and 100 you disclosed in 8C and table number 30. Similarly, in 9C, you disclosed 300 in 12A, and 12C, you disclosed a figure of 100. 12C is what? Any ITC which has been taken in the future returns. And 12E, that is the total of this table 12, was coming as 200. So this 200 was reconciled with your 3B 200, right? So this is the way you match. Now, if the same figures come to 18-19, this 100 would require to be spilled over in 18-19. So in 18-19, this 100 would be reflected in your returns, and 150 would be, say, your actual credit of 18-19. Your return would disclose 18-19 for 18-19. However, table 6B would be 250. So similar adjustment, you do it in table 12 of GSTR 9C. Let the GSTR 9 go as 250. Let there be an excess in table 8. However, in 12, you disclose a reconciliation. 12A would disclose 150. 12B would add 100, and 250 would be reconciled with 6B. So 12E would be reconciled with 6B. So these are the major two teething problems in the GSTR 9 and 9C of 18-19. I think with this, I conclude my deliverables this evening, and we can have the question answers now. So what I would do is I would start seeing from the chat box all the questions which are there. Just give me some time so that I can look at the queries. Okay, from Mr. Sunil Nath, there is a query. If IRA number will not be available on IRP portal after 24 hours, then how it will be accessible for any further requirement? So, sir, the JSON file which will be thrown back to you, that JSON file will have the IRN number. So, for all future purposes, that JSON file to be accessed, that IRN number, if you want to check, there would be a search option in the IRP where you can check whether that IRN number is correct or not. Mr. Sundar says whether in GSTR 2A IRN number and QR code would appear. As of now, we understand both IRN number and QR code would not appear. However, going forward, we again understand from the GST network, whatever we have got to understand is that IRN number would appear, but QR code cannot appear. What are all contains QR code and any fixed digits for QR code? So as we have discussed, 8 details are there for QR code and there is no fixed digit, all would be dynamic digits as per your invoice details. Mr. Parthiv Mehta says, will the GST website IRP system be stable enough to be able to all this seamlessly on timely basis? Sir, as I said, IRP would be only a pass-through option. And you see that there would be no data which would be stored in IRP, and therefore it can handle any amount of data, and it is a very robust website, you can say. Another participant says, should the e-invoicing necessary for sale made to unregistered dealer which is not B2C sale? Again, as I said, if he is an unregistered dealer, it is a B2C transaction and e-invoice is not applicable to such a transaction. Mr. Dinanath Gupta says, if invoice is having more than one line item, what is the rounding of tolerance of taxable value and tax for each line, or tolerance at the end of the invoice for total value and total tax? Well, there is a formula given in the forms. As of now, I have to also relook at it, but there is a tolerance level given in the form. Possibly it is to the rounded off to the next digit. But again, it is there in the forms in the FAQ. One has to check it again. Mr. Vijay Gupta says, when e-invoice portal will not save data, how it can reject the previous generated IRN? Very good question, Mr. Gupta. So the e-invoice portal would be linked to a central portal. The process would be when you are punching in the data or throwing the data to the IRP, the IRP would check it with the central processing portal and it would do a deduplication check in the central processing portal where such data would be stored. IRP would not be storing such a data. As I said, it is just a pass-through portal. IRP is attached to central server of GSTN. Yes, correct. What contents should be for QR code for B2C and company greater than 500 crore? Same content, sir. One participant says QR code for B2C applicable from 1st April for turnover. What will happen if it will not done? It can be done post facto. And yes, you are right. It is also this QR code requirement for B2C In notification 14, yes, I think it is extended to 1st October also. Okay, Mr. Shiva says we reconcile details with 8A table of 9 auto-populated not matching. Do you have any idea why it is not matching? Yes, even now, see 8A, whatever is auto-populated, it will show in the details also. But I understand that there is some issue in the 8A auto population itself, and the details would also be vitiated to that extent. So finally, as we have done last time, we should keep a tab of our purchase register, right? Even if 8A does not reconcile, let it not reconcile. As far as table 6 is perfect, I don't think there should be a problem. Same issue happened in 1718. Another participant says, if invoice is having more than one line item, what is the rounding of tolerance? Okay, this we have discussed. I think Shweta has pasted. Mr. Hitesh says, hello sir and Tax Connect team, very great initiative, informing, very informative, signing off. Thank you, Mr. Hitesh. Thank you for the participation. Mr. Sunil Giri says, it is not clear we have to take print IRN with QR code on our invoices. Mr. Sunil, as I have said, yes, the QR code as well as IRN both have to be printed on your invoices, right? Mr. Hassan Mira says, thank you, sir. Good session. My feedback is to make it simple with some illustration. Okay. So illustration, you see, in e-invoices, I could only show you one illustration, that is a sample e-invoice. It would be just a normal, whatever we have discussed. We will certainly include this and take this suggestion for our next webcast. One, Mr. Sundar says, in case we miss to upload invoice in IRP within 48 hours, how to handle? Yes, so good question. If the IRP of today can be only uploaded tomorrow, so if you miss to upload it, you have to amend your date of your invoice. Use one participant say, is it correct that table 6 B, C, D figures to be taken from 3B? Yes, table 6 figures can be taken from 3B. Mr. Sunil Nath, where can we get monthly invoice report? Well, you have to use a ASP GSP services for getting a QR report code. As I said, all the data has to be stored in your ASP GSP. Again, another option is it would reflect in your GSTR1. You can take a dump of your GSTR1 if you are not using ASP GSP. Okay, thanks. So I think we are done with all the questions. Thank you very much, all the participants for participating, and we will have this PPT mailed to all of you, right? And we would do further workshops almost once every month for GST, income tax, and various other areas. Look forward to your future participation on Tax Connect workshops. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all
Thanks.
participants.